Aue nā li e o ke au I hala E nāna mai a mākou nā pula pula o nei au e holo nei E ala mai kākou e nā kini nā mamo ka aina aloha Aloha wale ia aina ko kākou kahua Aue ka ili e ka hopu ehu ia nei E pai hou ia ka pohaku I paa maila ke kahua hale hou No kākou e nā pua e ho lulu ai E ala e ka I, ka mahi, ka palena I mua aloa a ka lei o ka lana kila.
Kaulana nā pua o Hawaii Upa ama o te o ka aina Mai ka elele o ka loko ino Pala anunu me ka pākaha Pane mai Hawaii I moku o ke awe Kokua nā honoa o Pi'ilani Kāko o mai kaua I o mano Aupu me ke oni o ka kui hewa Aolea e ka ui ka pulima Aole, hiu Maluna o ka pepa o ka enemi Ho'ohui aina kuai hewa I ka pono sivila a o ke kanaka Aole mākoa I mina Aole, I ka pu'utala o ke Aupuni Lava mako I ka pohaku I ka ai ka maha o ka aina Mahope mako o lili ulani Mahope Aloha a e ka pono o ka aina Aina ia mai ana ka puana Aina ia mai O ka poe I aloha I ka aina Kaulana nā pua 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 Kaulana nā pua
Kama aloha e ke ali'i nui o kuali'i nui no kailua hama kua o ahu. Aloha mai e kai ana ahu ula ke ali'i o ka moku o ke ave. Aloha to all of you listeners out there. Welcome to Hawaiian Kingdom Now, Hawaiian Kingdom Perspectives on current news, on news that affects Kako, Kalahui, Hawaii. Today's mana o lelo is Aupuni I Hoopunipuni. The government that lies, the government that deceives, the government that has been engaged in fraud for over a century. Aupuni I Hoopunipuni. If you just go into Na Puke Vehe Vehe, www.vehevehe.org. It's the free online Hawaiian language dictionary. And you type in the words Aupuni. It says government, kingdom, dominion, nation, people, under a ruler, national. Aupuni Emepela, empire. Aupuni Koloniala, colonial government. Aupuni Hui, Union of Nations, Confederation. Na Aupuni Hui Ia, United Nations, League of Nations. Aupuni Ka Ko'o, ally. So in this description talks about the many different nations, the government, the kingdom, dominions, the Aupuni. But something happened on January 17, 1893 that makes it Aupuni I Hoopunipuni. So when you type in Hoopunipuni, what's going to pop up is you need to look for the root word, puni. So when you type in the root word puni, the first definition is surrounded, controlled, overcome. Second, to be fond of, desire, covet. But the third one is the one we're looking at. Deceived, deluded, to believe a lie. Puni vale, mai noho oe a puni. Don't you believe, don't lie. Ho'opuni, to deceive, to fool, to delude. So we've been deceived, we've been fooled, we've been taken for a ride. And when you type in Ho'opuni in Papa Kilo database, 1,989 hits pop up in the year between 1890 and 1899. So the article that we're going to look at that popped up on August 17th, 1895 from the Nupepa Kealoha Aina says this: Ua mana'o lako nei he kanaka puni vale oia I ka lako nei mau olelo ho'o puni puni a me na ha'awi pa ina ho'o mali mali me ka holo ka'a ana I o a ia nei. So this false news, the fake news, the fake stories has continued in our territory and around the world for a very, very long time. And it's this show that talks about the truth of those lies, where you can shed off the layers of deceit, fraud, and lies that are indoctrinated into our families, starting off with our grandparents from the turn of the century. So, olelo kako, Aupuni I Hoopunipuni. The government that deceived, the government that fooled everyone, is the government that we need to expose from the corruption. So that's the mana olelo for today. Aupuni I Hoopunipuni. So we got an exciting lineup of news this week. Kuponopono is going to talk about some COVID South Pacific news. And then we got Auntie Cookie's Corner, going to introduce the weather, the moon calendar, and talk a little bit about tourism officials and how they falsely market the Hawaiian Kingdom as the 50th fake state of America. And then Kingdom Kale is going to come in and share with us about the latest updates of COVID-19 in our district, on our island, Moku'okeawe. And then we're going to round it off with Kumukini sharing about Olelo Kupuna, or stories of our Kupuna. And then we're going to close it off with the Hawaiian Kingdom Violator or Champion, a new segment of our show, and our Makahana Ka'ike. And don't leave just yet, because Himeni Kako, we need to sing Hawaii Pono I, the Hawaiian Kingdom National Anthem, so we can manifest the restoration of the Hawaiian Kingdom through our voices, singing all verses of the Hawaiian Kingdom National Anthem, Kako. So my article for this week is from the Hawaii Tribune Herald, Kishimoto reopening of schools to be approved by health state of county officials. So that's the thing, Kako. There's these official this, official that, but none of them are in the classroom. Why are these guys making decisions for teachers and students when they're not even in a classroom. They hold meetings through Zoom or Google. They won't even go into a classroom, but yet we trust these guys to make decisions on behalf of the teachers and the keiki, which are in the classrooms with wide community spread of COVID, lacking contact tracing lies from the director of the health department. I mean, if you can even trust this government for even a second, you need a good ear cleaning. You need to get your cataracts cleaned or something, because you cannot see or hear if you continue to allow these lies, fraud, and corruption inundate your soul, your spirit. You must protect yourself from all of these lies. And we need to keep our keiki safe, our community safe. You know, let's shut it down now. Stop all of the lies. Stop all of the threats from non-working of government officials in the classrooms, and just keep our keiki safe the whole first semester all the way to Christmas at the very least, until this thing is done, Kako. So that's my Hawaiian Kingdom perspective. Is the Hawaiian Kingdom would have shut this down early and not allowed any tourists or people coming back in to spread COVID-19. So without any further ado, we're going to go straight to the cornerstone, KP Kupunapono, with our South Pacific COVID-19 news update, Kako.
Good morning. Aloha kako. This is the August 22nd COVID-19 South Pacific update. First off, we're looking at Aotearoa. They have a total of 1,569 current cases. As we go to American Samoa, they have 0 cases. The Cook Islands, they have 0 cases. Guam has spiked up to 767 cases. As we move on to Fiji, they have just 28 cases currently from last week of 27. As we look into our own nation state, the Hawaiian Kingdom, we have surged to 6,072. So right now, currently in the South Pacific, the Hawaiian Kingdom has the most active cases of COVID-19 compared to Aotearoa, with, it's just 1,321. So the main concern right now is the spike within our occupied nation state due to the military presence and also the lack of leadership within the fake state government. As we move on to the Kingdom of Tonga, they have 0 cases. Kiribati, they have 0 cases. Marshall Islands, they have 0 cases. You go to Nauru, they have 0 cases. New Caledonia, they're currently at the same number of 23 cases. As we move on to the Northern Mariana Islands, they have a small spike of 54 active cases. If we look to Palau, they have 0 cases. Papua New Guinea, they have actually a huge spike from 2 weeks ago of just 188. This morning, their count is 361 cases. As we go to the Solomons, they have 0 cases. Samoa, they have 0 cases. Tahiti, they have spiked up to currently 298 cases of COVID-19. As we look at Tokelau, they have 0 cases. And finally, Tuvalu, they have 0 cases. So this is the current update status of the COVID-19 in the South Pacific. As we move on to other news in the South Pacific, we have this news of Tonga, where the government is currently enacting measures to stifle or limit um, information or news, and that's a huge concern among people living in the Kingdom of Tonga, as they can't really speak openly about current news or anything like it. And it looks like in the government they're going to actually do more censorship on media news and other information regarding the Kingdom of Tonga. The next news that we have is China is actually claiming that they have this COVID-19 vaccine that's going to cure people. So they're using it in the PNG on minors in that region. So the only concern that the people have, or medical professions around the world, is that this vaccine isn't fully tested, and it might have side effects, or it's not going to work on people. So that's the news out of PNG. And finally, we have another news article. And it's about this senior Fiji police officer charged with alleged abuse of office. So this police officer is using his power to have self promotion, and also to get a lot of favorable things done for him in that position. So right now there's an investigation on this senior Fiji police officer. And with this is the Hawaiian Kingdom Now News on this August 22nd, 2020.
Mahalo, KP, for our South Pacific news. Wow, that's amazing. Tonga, yeah. Fiji, COVID-19, Hawaiian Kingdom taking the top spot. It's not because of the Hawaiians, but it's because of what, Kako? Yep, you named it. The illegal occupation of the Hawaiian Kingdom by the United States of America. Mahalo, Cornerstone, KP. Now we're going to move on to Cookie's Corner with the weather, starting off with Keala o Kamahina Kako on this Saturday.
Aloha and welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody on. Mahalo for chiming in. I see Planny, Lahui, Alan, mahalo, Uncle Layton. Okay, on to the weather. So this morning, our sunrise was at 6:12 this morning. Our sunset is at 6:55 this evening. We have our low tide coming in this morning at about 12:40. High tide was early this morning, about 6:50. Also, the sunshine and some clouds, and the temperature is going to be in the high 80s today. Be maka'ala because the winds are 10 to 20 miles per hour. Hurricane Genevieve is sending some east swells, not high for the surfers, but good enough to jump on that Nalo wave, And then also, I wanted to remind you folks that in our Hawaiian moon calendar, today is good for fishing. How they say holo holo, right? You not tell anybody, yeah. If we're going holo holo, cause then our kupuna no give us what we go for. Today is also a good day to plant uala and kalo. So very good day. They're gonna be very happy if you plant them today. And then also today, on our moon calendar is Ku Pau. These are the first, second, third, and fourth night of Ku. The couple period of Ku ends, and the first Ku. Many farmers believe that this is a good time to plant, like I said, uala, sweet potato, kalo. They will grow upright erect, just like Ku, into the Lepo soil, the soil. Um, and then we we want to introduce a new segment called Cookie's Corner. And so I would like to speak upon, there was an article in the Star Advertiser published on the 17th, and it was tourism officials can't market Hawaii as a quote the safest place on earth anymore. Um, so I pulled out something that really was striking to me, how our mayors, every single mayors on our moku is pushing to start a bubble. And Donna Domingo, the president of the ILWU, Local 142, she represents all the islands, the major islands, hotel workers. And she said she's still reviewing this concept of, quote, resort bubbles, and is awaiting details on how the hotels are planning on protecting our hotel workers and their families. Because their risk for exposure will go high, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. And she said, while the concept is intriguing and could help stimulate some of our economy, we need to review our any proposed safety measures and protocols. And if she feels confident that those safety measures will protect her workers and their families, this rule that came out on Oahu, no more than 5 people. Many of our families get more than 5 people living in their hollies. And so I don't understand the concept of our mayors doing this and the governor agreeing to do this. And so for me personally, I say ole to these resort bubbles. First, take care of the residents, our employees. I know the economy is bad already, but the clusters are happening. It's in our communities. And so this is my Cookies Corner, Auntie Cookie. Every week I'll have an article, a current article that I'm going to speak upon, and hopefully look to the positive of it. I mean, of course, there's the negative in these articles that we're all going to speak upon. But for me, I aloha Donna Domingo for stepping up and thinking of her employees and their families. And mahalo, aloha. And so my first word that I'm going to educate everyone is a word that a lot of people don't understand or don't know, or maybe haven't heard, and I hope you have. It's called inculcation. And so every week I'm going to introduce a new terminology that's kind of a trigger word under Hawaiian Kingdom law and international law. And so this week, like I said, inculcation. So I'm going to read to you folks the definition to inculcation. To inculcate is to instill or impress an idea on someone. So inculcation is the process of instilling or impressing ideas. A lot of teachers in this form, they use inculcation, teaching repetitiously to students, hoping that it will sink in. Parents employ inculcation, instilling values like don't lie, don't steal. Also, our military uses this in their groups because they impress upon their military rules and regulations. And so the reason why I brought up this word of inculcation is many of us who live here in Hawaii are learning the truth based on facts of what happened to the Hawaiian Kingdom 127 years ago. In 1907, our schools were the highest literacy, and then America, overthrew in 1893. And so they started to change our educational system. And there's an article in the Hawaiian Kingdom blog how they came to our school and watched these children, our kupunas, my great-grandparents, having to be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance and raise their hands up to the American flag. And this was done repetitiously. This was done over and over and over again. And that's inculcation. And they impose their American education onto our Hawaiian education. Pre overthrow, we were at 95% literacy. Every family in the Hawaiian Kingdom had a book to read and knew how to read, knew how to write, knew how to speak two languages, Hawaiian and English. And this was because our queen. But in 1907, they saw that our literacy was higher than theirs. They meaning America, the American government. And so this word in Caucasian is that. And so 127 years, many of us have learned the truth based on facts, and we've all been inculcated with Americanization. We was never colonized, but that is one of the words that I'll bring up in one of my weeks too, so you guys can learn the differences of Americanization, inculcation, colonization, and so forth. But this word of the week is inculcation, and look it up. Learn that word. It's so important for everyone to understand that things are changing for us here in the Hawaiian Kingdom, and all good, because we all waking up, we all learning the truth based on facts, and there's so many resources out there that you can go to. And so I mahalo you again for enjoying Cookie's Corner. Auntie Cookie, I'm Auntie Cookie, and every week I'll be educating you on terminology so that you can get so you can get used to these words. And I challenge each of you to have conversations with each other and reach out to me if you feel like you need to know more about inculcation. Let's talk story. And I aloha everyone for watching, and share the link. And before my segment ends, go to HawaiianKingdomNow.com, subscribe, and get the latest current news that we have in our broad spectrum of our aloha, our ohana here at Hawaiian Kingdom Now. And mahalo for watching my segment. Enjoy the rest of the show. Aloha.
Ooh, the ono that cookie with chocolate chip and whipped cream on top, the inculcation. So stay tuned for Auntie Cookie's more in-depth show during the week about the word inculcation. Moving on to Kingdom Kale with the Kingdom news on that affects us here on Moku o Keawe. Kingdom Kale. Aloha. You on?
Yeah, I'm on. The story that I'm bringing to all of you this morning is, because of the complacency that we have had here in the Hawaiian Kingdom, in regards to the COVID-19, because we have been so good at keeping the pandemic and the spread of this virus, from increasing amongst us. I think people have become very complacent, in taking care of and making sure that they wear their masks, they continue with the social distancing, and at the same time, they minimize the group gatherings. And so in the video that we showed, there was a big gathering at Seaview in Puna, just, in Kalapana. And people there disregarded, didn't pay any attention to wearing masks, social distancing, and group gatherings. So there were several hundred people there, and so as a result of that, what we're seeing now is a huge spike in COVID-19 cases in Hilo. And in talking to a friend of mine who works at Hilo Medical Center, and just talked with her last week, she said that so far there have not been any cases that have come into Hilo Medical Center in regards to COVID-19. So yesterday on the news, and if you see it now, a charter school, a Hawaiian charter school in Keaukaha, confirmed that 8, and they didn't say whether it was staff members or students, have been tested positive for COVID-19. And this was at Kaumeke Ka'eo Public School in Keaukaha. And they reported this on Friday. The other thing that is very concerning to me is the lack of trust and the lying that has gone on in the Department of Health, because they have kept quiet where the COVID-19 cases are in terms of where throughout the island, and they use a real lame excuse in saying that, well, they just didn't know where people got the COVID-19, so they didn't want to say whether it was in Honoka or whether it was in Kona or whether it was in Hilo or whether that's a lie. They know where people are, and in addition to that, because of their lack of contact tracing, I don't believe that they've had people follow up with people that have been tested positive with this COVID-19 to determine, who, what, when, and where these people have infected. And so as a result of that, we're now starting to see a huge spike, in cases. And in addition to that, they're wanting to open up the schools. And earlier, Kalania Kea alluded to opening the schools too early. In the Hawaiian Kingdom, when the pandemics came, everything was shut down. The king shut everything down and isolated areas where a pandemic was being created. They didn't have vaccines back then, but at the same time, they were able to overcome these pandemics. And yes, people died, but they were able to deal with it and stop the pandemic. Well, that's not being done here in the Hawaiian Kingdom today. You have those leaders of the fake state, especially David Egghead, who doesn't have the cojones to make that tough decision to shut down all of the islands, both from airline travel as well as calling for stay-at-home policies for at least 2 to 4 weeks so that we could beat this thing. And as a result of that, you have, like the earlier video that you saw with the people in Seaview having their, quote, their drum, that they call their drum circle. And it happens every weekend. They start at Kehena Park, Kehena Beach, and then they move to Seaview and continue. And as a result, now we're starting to see major, major spikes, here in Hilo, and also people letting their guard down, thinking that, oh, well, I think, our numbers are so low, I feel safe that I can go out and do things that I used to do. You cannot do that. This disease, until there's a vaccine that they're able to develop to stop this pandemic, COVID-19 will always be with us. Okay, and another case in point was also yesterday. You had Leong's. Leong's had to shut down, and everybody knows about Leong's Chinese restaurant, along Kanoe Lehua. And Leon shut down because one of their employees contracted COVID-19. Now, imagine if you have been to Leon's within the last week since the 15th, you may have been come into contact with this individual, Leon's restaurant, even if you went in and bought, a side order of chashu. Okay, and so you just never know what exposure you may have. However, if you went in with your mask and you kept social distance, and hopefully they didn't have a restaurant full of people sitting in there, then chances of you not contracting COVID-19 are really good. However, you just don't know. And so even when you have friends coming over, the precaution needs to be taken to make sure if your friends are coming over and even other family members, make sure they wear their masks when they come over to your house. And again, I know as Hawaiians, we love to hug, we love to honey and so forth. Cannot do that, at least right now. So you can delay that in the future. And so this is what I have for today. We'll be talking more about this stuff. And in regards to what's coming up in the Hawaiian Kingdom, you can be assured that there's going to be some good news coming down the road. Mahalo, everybody.
Awesome. Kingdom Kale with the kingdom perspective on COVID-19 in our area. Hilo Town, Puna Town, Pahoa Town, Moku o Keave. Mahalo, Kingdom Kale. And don't forget, encourage Kingdom Kale to open up another segment during the week so that he can go in depth on his subject and topics, because it is needed, because change is coming kako. Ua mau ke ea o ka aina I ka pono. Now to Kanani a o Pahoa Eia no. Here comes the beautiful Kumu Kini with our Papa Olelo Hawaii, ka olelo o ke ia aina o ko Hawaii pai aina segment. Kumu Kini, aloha, are you there?
Oia, hiki no. Ano laila, aloha nui kako e nā kini nā mamo o Hawaii nei, o wau ho'i ke ia o kumu kini, ka laua e ka uluwehi o ka aina ka awa. Eia no wau I ka aina me ka makani he nui o waiko loa I ke ia kakahi aka nani nei. No leila e nana kako I ka poka mana ke olu olu. Oia, no leila Inehine oia ho I ka la moku aina, ka la I ho o kumu I ai ko ka ako moku aina he wano ho I maluna o Hawaii nei. Keia he kana ono puma kahi mau makahiki I o ke ia noho hewa ana o kākou. No leila e nana ana kākou nā hana like ole o I ike ia ma ke ia puke alo nei. Aupuni o Hawaii, nā mea I ho'olaha ia. Ia'u ke ike I ka poka mana.
Okay, it's on. Holomua. The Pokemana is up.
Oia. Oia.
Aloha.
No laila, eia kako. He la nui ke ia. He la nui no ke ia. Loa na ano free shipping and loa oia o he kula ke ia manawa I ke ia inehi nei oia I he la nui ia oia no leila pehea ko kako mau la nui o ka la hoi ea ka la ku o koa he la mau la nui ke la ai leila pono ke ia ano hanana o na la nui no ko kako mau la nui Hawaiian Independence Day, Hawaiian Restoration Day, no ho'i, oia. Pani ia, eia na ho'olaha, oia. A ike kako I ke ia maula, ke na'awao nei kako. Oia ho'i, Hawaii the fake state. More and more of us are speaking about this and are saying it. It's become more normalized. And if, despite all of that, mau no ka ho'opunipuni. Hoa o ana lako ho'opunipuni a kako o Hawaii I ke ia. Po mai ka I kako I ke ia ano po'e o Ron Williams. Hele o ko, imi o ko on his Ron Williams made a wonderful article. He wrote a wonderful article in 2008, I want to say. Check him out. Check out his post that he posted. And helu helu e imi o ko. Oia. Ke ano ka ho'opunipuni no ke ia la nui. And so ke ia ki'i hope loa, you know, I want to say that we all know that this is fake state and we've progressed to say that we are a fake state. But I want us to holomua, thinking forward, Hawaiian Kingdom now. It's about what we makavama mua ikavama hope. We are not I'm not fake, you're not fake, our kingdom is not fake. You know what we are? We are a nation state. We are a nation state that is internationally recognized. No Laila, let's switch that up from becoming a fake state. We are a nation state. We are a nation state. No Laila, e ho'olohe kako I ka leo, make wau, e ho'olohe kako I keia mau mana'o o nā kupuna. I ka mana'o o nā kupuna, he state paha kako, nā po e Hawaii. He mana'o keia o nā kupuna o Anake Lucy. Ka noho Inea ka mana'o Mika Sobe. No halawa moloka'i oia. A ua wala'au oia me kekahi wahine I Kelepona ia laua o Anake Lucy me Ana Kalalale Lindsay Kawanoi Kimura. A ole ike ia ka inoa o keia wahine I Kelepona mai. No leila, ua pa'i leo ia ke ia ma ka polo kalamu o ka leo Hawaii helu ole e lua e walu I ka makahiki umikumaiwa kanahiku kumakolu I ka mahina o malaki I ka la kalua kumahiku. E lohe ana kako I nā mana'o. I nā mana'o ia he state paha kako. Ka po'e Hawaii. A e lohe ana kako I ka olelo paipai a nā kupuna ia kako.
Let's move on to the next segment. Doesn't look like the technical difficulties is working right now. So let's move on to next section, Hawaiian Kingdom Violator versus Champion. So for this week, my Hawaiian Kingdom Violator is Bruce Anderson for lying to the public about the contact tracing program and not being able to provide the truth to the senators. So when the senators went to the Department of Health and looked at the meager number of tracers that was in the office without mask and not following protocol. It was just egregious to where David Ige had to scold the Senate president and the senators for going to the Department of Health and double checking on not having enough contact tracers. So for Bruce Anderson, he is my Hawaiian Kingdom violator today. He wins that award for allowing the community spread that's happening right now on Oahu to get larger and larger and larger. So he's the Hawaiian Kingdom violator, Bruce Anderson. Now to Kupuna Pono. Who's your Hawaiian Kingdom champion or violator, Kupuna Pono?
And it started with the, the so-called Hawaii Territory, which was organized on June 15th, 1900s. So for the, for the remainder of 59 years, you had 12 people who actually was appointed to the so-called territory of Hawaii. So I'm just going to read off the names of people who actually was the so-called governors under the occupation. Okay, so first off, we have Sanford Dole between 1900 to 1903, appointed by William McKinley. Then you have George R. Carter, appointed by Roosevelt, and he actually served from 1903 to August 1907. Then we have Walter F. Freer, also appointed by Roosevelt, and he served between 1907 to 1913. Then we have this guy also occupied, governor, appointed by Wilson, and he served between 1913 to 1918. Then the next bad character is McCarthy, also appointed by American President Wilson, and he served between 1918 to 1921. Okay, so the next person is Farrington, another so-called governor, was appointed by Harding, and he served between 1921 to 1929. Then you have Judd, also appointed by Herbert Hoover, and he served between 1929 to 1934. As we move on to the list, you have another occupying governor appointed by Roosevelt, and he served between 1934 to 1942. And this person is Joseph Poindexter. Okay, another appointed governor by Roosevelt was Steinbach. He served between 1942 to 1951. Then you have Long, also appointed by Truman, and he served between 1951 to 1953. Then you have King, also an occupied governor appointed by, who's this president? Eisenhower. So he was, he served between 1953 to 1957. And the last appointed governor for the territory of Hawaii was Quinn. And Eisenhower appointed him, and he served between 1957 to 1959 when they had the so-called fake state vote to for the occupied state to become the so-called 50th state of Hawaii. So these bad characters is actually the kingdom, my kingdom violators for today.
Mahalo Kupuna Pono for that list of Hawaiian Kingdom violators and governors appointed by the president in those years. Now to Cookie's Corner for Cookie's Hawaiian Kingdom champion or violator. Aloha, Cookie, you there?
Aloha, Mai. So So I gon' kako kupuna pono, man. These Hawaiian Kingdom violators. Now you fast forward to present day. These guys, I know can. So we gotta remember who they are, what they did, and their descendants. And not only their descendants, but get guys like coming up, Kingdom Kale gonna talk about the biggest guy of all, who these guys, these violators, we gotta call him out. We gotta call one spade, right? So again, I kako kupuna pono in this list of usurpers, insurgents, Hawaiian Kingdom violators. And we get plenty present day Hawaiian Kingdom violators, and we gotta call them out. And so I kako kupuna pono on my week of choice for Hawaiian Kingdom violators is these 13 people that started it, and we are here to end it. All of us here, the Lahui, you, me, all of us, because all of us, we all doing this together. And I also want to kind of change that up to a positive, what Kumukini said, that we are a nation state. Let's all remember, we transitioning from the fake state to a nation state. And you know what? The Hawaiian Kingdom is rising. We rising together. And so I kako both. I going from the Hawaiian Kingdom violators to the rising of a nation, our Hawaiian Kingdom nation, and all of us together, we are doing it. So that's my violator Hawaiian Kingdom rising interpretation.
Mahalo Cookie for your
Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo Cookie for your violator. Kingdom Kale, who's your HK violator this week?
Aloha. Okay. Okay. Now, my violator, the biggest violator that I ever had, well, not ever had, but for all of us today, is his name is David Egghead. And every time he has calls for a press conference, along with Bruce Anderson and Sarah Park, it's something that you can tell you cannot trust the guy, because that he's lying. As well as Bruce Anderson and Sarah Park. And their primary concern has never ever been the people in Hawaii. All of us that live here. Their primary concern has always been business and the hotel industry and tourism coming in. It's been money. And this is where all of these things have got to stop, because this is the driving factor in their decision making. And their decision making is putting all of us at risk. And so this is why, David Egghead, he's the major problem. Now, as far as the Hawaiian Kingdom rising, I can only think of a couple. One, Dr. Keanu Sai. And secondly, the Royal Commission of Inquiry. And if you don't know who the Royal Commission of Inquiry are, it's made up of international experts that have now addressed what constitutes war crimes. And they are now looking at taking evidence that was of things that were done here in the Hawaiian Kingdom and applying it to their definitions of war crimes. That's what consists of the Royal Commission of Inquiry. And they're currently looking at evidence that have been submitted to them. So those are my heroes, Dr. Keanu Sai, along with the Royal Commission of Inquiry. for us today, because what happens after this with what they're doing is going to have a huge impact, positive impact on all of us, as well as being able to move forward and restoring the Hawaiian Kingdom. That's it.
Hoopunipuni, your Hawaiian Kingdom violator. Don't forget to press unmute and just start talking. Don't wait till you see yourself on the screen. Aloha.
Hey, aloha nui kako. Kalamai for that earlier, but I just wanted to make the two main points that the kupu on Kani Aina spoke about was kapa ia kako he state aka nae ina nana e kako po e Hawaii kako. She's saying that they kapaed us, they named us, they call us a state. But when you truly look at it and you truly know, we are Hawaiian. And that's what she said. And then she gives words of encouragement. Olelo pai pai. She said, you need to learn the language of this land. E olelo Hawaii kako. We need to learn olelo Hawaii. Because when you don't, then she says you are hapapu. Hapapu. That means partially finished or incomplete. Your knowledge will be incomplete if you don't know the language of this land. And when you learn the language of this land and you speak the language of this land, then you will be oya i'o, true. You will know the truth, you will know the facts, and you will be knowledgeable. Your knowledge will be verified. No, Laila, I want to give a aloha out there to everyone who in hana nui ma keia papahana o Kani Aina, mahale ana kalalale, amena haumana makikula nui o manoa at that time. And my second and final aloha is that I want to give out there is for all of our Hawaiian language community who have been creating new vocabulary for the word for mask. We have mapoho, we have pale ihu, pale maka, ho'omalu maka, pale vaha, pale ihu, aha, uhi maka, pale alo, palulu, maka ki'i, pu ihu, and pu nuku ea. And so this has really shown an evolution of our language, our olelo Hawaii, that we can take olelo ku'una, words that were used from the past. We can create new words and we can put words together. And so we have all of these different new vocabulary for the word mask. So I'm going to give a shout out and aloha to all of our po'e na'awao, maka olelo Hawaii, and evolving our Hawaiian language to fit today. And that's how it is in Hawaiian Kingdom now. Right now, we are evolving, we're progressing, we're moving forward, and we're now dealing with ma'i ahulau, this coronavirus. And so with that, we are evolving ourselves and our olelo kekahi. Mahalo, aloha.
Mahalo e kumukini, mahalo e kuki, mahalo e Kingdom Kale, and kupuna pono for your Hawaiian Kingdom violators. First introduction of that segment. Stay tuned for next week while we polish it up and make it streamlined and going one to the next, to the next, to the next. And now with our last section, we're just gonna talk about the Kuhio class action on HawaiianKingdomNow.com. You need to go and sign up, especially if you are a waitlister on the Hawaiian Homeland's waitlist. Go to HawaiianKingdomNow.com so that you can get the same reparations deal as those who signed on to the Kalima case. We'll be opening up another segment of Hawaiian Kingdom Now News.com with the lawyers that'll be coming up and doing a segment and explaining to everyone what exactly entails of the Kuhio class action. But you shouldn't wait on the list anymore. We need to wait on the land immediately. So That is the Makahana Ka'ike for this week, the Kuhio class action. Go to the website, HawaiianKingdomNow.com. And in closing, e himeni kako I kemele o ko kako Aupuni. Let's sing the Hawaiian national anthem of the Hawaiian Kingdom, which is Hawaii Pono I, all three verses, not the fake state version of just the first verse and the chorus, which indoctrinates us. So, himeni kako, makaukau oko apau, aloha. Follow for tuning in. Stay tuned next week on Hawaiian Kingdom Now News at 7 a.m. Aloha, everybody.
Aloha.